I'm on a mission, get out of my way. That Johnny Green don't make him pay. He been messing with another man's wife. Yeah, and I've been paid to take his life.
Hi everyone, Lance here, best day ever MTB, and I've got some great news and some not so great news. The great news is the guys from Electrify New Zealand up on the North Shore asked me would I like to review the KTM Prowler. Now I must admit the first thing I did was I googled KTM Prowler and had a look at this thing, thought, hell yes. Now if you watched one of my recent videos, I described the looks of a bike as Marmite. In other words, you'd either love it or you'd hate it. This thing, you could only love it. It's a beautiful colour. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of orange, red, fleckers, depending on what light's on it. It's carbon, beautiful form, coil, carbon bars. It's a beautiful looking bike. I know it's only my opinion, but it's the correct opinion. If you don't like the look of this bike, there's something seriously wrong with you. Now, before we get too far, we'll explain one thing. My review's basically one grumpy old man's opinion about a bike. Now, on a cheaper bike, and cheap is relative when you're talking e-bikes, I'll give a cheaper bike a bit more slack. This bike, however, retails for 14,000 New Zealand dollars. So I'm going to be a little bit more critical about it. So if I say something about the bike and you've got one of these, don't start crying about it. It's just a bike review, okay? But anyway, let's talk about this thing. Up front, 180mm of travel, got some RockShox lyrics on it. Matched out the back with a RockShox deluxe coil. So this thing is a real big jump downhill shredding machine. You can probably ride the rail trail on it, but it's not really designed for that. It's a mullet, 29 up the front, 27.5 at the back, DT Swiss wheels, and set up with Maxxis tyres. You know me, Maxxis or walk. What else has it got? It's got XDR derailleur, 12-speed XD cassette. Up front, XTR shifters, XTR brakes, love XTR brakes. Talking of brakes though, and I'll get my Red Bull film crew to come around and I'll show you the rotors up the front.
Does that mean I'm getting paid for this?
We'll talk about that later, dear. Let's just try and stay professional, eh? So, okay, we've got a Ice Tech rotors, 203 up the front, looks pretty cool. If we come out to the back, we've got, and I love the way the calipers here sit in between the rear triangle. I think that looks really cool. However, it's a 180 rotor. Now, 180 rotor on the back is probably a good setup for your average enduro bike, but this is a 25 kilo, 180mm travel downhill bike. So I do wonder whether that rotor is a little bit small. But anyway, a fairly minor thing. All right, so I do have one serious gripe about this bike, and it's something that can be fixed. Okay, watch this seat post. Are you ready, guys? You ready? Look at that, 125mm of travel. Now I've got the same seat post on a 10-year-old XC bike. It's even got the stupid little push button lever to actuate it. I thought they'd gone out with a dinosaur. So I must admit, if I was buying this bike, I would just rip the seat post out before it left the shop and change it to a better one. There's nothing wrong with a reverb, but 125mm of travel. In fact, I'm going to show you something. You know, grumpy old men. Let's drop the seat post down. Okay, don't say anything about the socks and sandals. But I have to tippy-toe my feet on the ground when the seat is in its lowest position. So that's just ridiculous in my opinion. Anyway, let's put that back. One final thing, you'll notice that this system, we've got rid of the ugly box here on the Bosch systems. I always thought it looks really ugly. And we've got with the Kiosk system, which is a lot smarter looking. Comes with this little display unit here, and it clicks into there. I do have one or a couple of concerns about this. One thing, as I say, you can take it off, and one of the cool things about this is if you take it off, if someone steals this bike, they can't make it work without this, okay? My concern is that I would leave this inside the house, and when I got out to the forest, I'd realise I didn't have it and my bike wouldn't work. The other thing is that I'm well known for throwing my bike down the track, and I used to ride with the old bike computers, and I was forever getting them knocked off. Now, if this thing got knocked off and got lost in the bush somewhere, that could make for an interesting ride home. But I'm probably worrying about something that isn't really worth worrying about. Anyway, it's a pretty awesome looking bike. Really looking forward to riding it. So anyway, I'll see you in the morning and let's go and see what we can shred on this thing. Okay, we've jumped forward 24 hours. We're now at Riverhead Forest at a place called the West Coast Riders Club. Now yesterday I said to you I had some great news and some not so great news, but I forgot to tell you what the not so great news was. And that was the weather yesterday was terrible. Pretty much rained all day. So I didn't ride the thing, had to wait until today. Gonna ride it today. Everything's gonna be a bit wet and slippery. But anyway, super keen to get out there on the trail. So anyway, we'll talk a bit more as we ride. Alright, I just met another rider and he said it's super slippery today, so might start rather hesitant I think on this thing. I am going very hesitant, I must say. Doesn't have a mud guard on it, so I don't have much mud where you can get water on the lens. Does seem to have the Bosch rattle. I don't know what it is about these Bosch bikes. I do like the Bosch motor, but yeah, it feels like there's the old Bosch rattle. Some people have tried to solve the problem with various packing and things. Alright, so we're going on a little bit of a climb. Yep, it goes this way. So this is the Bosch Gen 4 motor. It's got a little lever here to change through the modes. You've got the typical Eco to EMTB, which is usually what I ride in most of the time, and turbo setting as well. So yeah, reasonably easy to change. I must admit I have broken one of these levers off here once before, and yeah, it just seems to me a relatively fragile point of the bike, but saying that, it wasn't that expensive to replace it when I did break it. Actually, I'm in turbo at the moment. I'm quite liking that. Well, let's drop back to EMTB. The old motor sounds pretty good. It's a little tiny bit whiny, but pretty normal to be honest. No noise yet. Certainly not the noisiest one I've ridden by a long way. So yeah, I don't think you'd notice the motor noises. So there is a little bit of a sort of rattle, I think, when you go downhill. But to be honest, most of the Bosch bikes, I've tended to find that to some degree. A little disappointed, it's so wet and slippery. This place is clay and it's super fast in the dry, but in the wet it is super slippery. And yeah, just a little bit nervous, so might see if I can't ride again tomorrow. Hopefully it might dry out a little bit more, but at the moment, yeah, just taking it easy. It really is quite slippery. And yeah, don't want to dump this expensive bike and have to pay for it. Alright, done a couple of tracks. Initial response, really nice bike. It's taking me a little bit of a time to get the feel of it, but I think some of that's got to do with the fact how wet it is, and I'm just a little bit nervous. In fact, I've ridden around all the jumps so far, so I think it's time to see if we can actually send the thing and hit a few jumps. 180mm of travel, actually 180 fork, 170 on the rear, but I guess we definitely need to check that out. Also a little bit hesitant because actually a couple of weeks ago landed on the old ribs and they're still a bit sore, but anyway, hopefully with that much travel I shouldn't even feel it. Shit. Okay, if you're wondering what I was doing there, I had a bee inside my goggles and it was crawling around above my eye and that freaked me out. Sorry. Alrighty, let's try, see what this thing feels like in the air. Nice plush landing. Yeah, it feels pretty good. This bike's down as a large, I think 462 reach, 65-degree head angle. So yeah, nice sort of numbers. I think it fits me right. I'm about 5'10", something like that, getting shorter by the day. As for the brakes, well, talking about the rear rotor, they seem to be working really well, and it's wet today and they're not making a sound, which is one of the things I do like about Shimano brakes. There is another manufacturer that as soon as they get wet squeal like crazy, but we won't mention them. But yeah, got the brakes on now, not a sound, and they're working well, but again, not huge long downhill, so I'm not really using them that much. One thing I have just noticed is the bike has a steering lock, which doesn't look very obvious when you look at it, but not a bad idea really. It's certainly you can't notice it when you're riding because it is quite an extreme lock, but I guess it does stop the bars spinning all the way around, so I guess I won't be doing bar spins. The other thing that I have noticed, if we can get right in there on the little screen, in the top right hand corner it tells you how much battery is left. Now for my eyes, in my 50s, I can only just make that out, so could be bigger for us older folk. Alright, I guess one thing we could talk about is drivetrains on e-bikes. It's a thing that I've been a bit interested in. Whoa. Oh, that's a big puddle. XTR drivetrain. This thing, I must admit, is working absolutely flawlessly despite it being a bit wet and horrible. So, should we do this in the wet? Whoa, shit. Whoa. Whew. Okay, that is quite slippery, guys. Quite slippery. What were we saying about drivetrains? Oops. Now, interestingly enough, you'll notice that I've just actually knocked the controls off just with my hand, and they're lying on the ground there at the moment, and that took almost nothing to do that. So yeah, I don't know, it does seem to come off, whoops, remarkably easy. That's back in there. Anyway, it's saying that it didn't come off over all that rock garden there, so it stayed on for that. Okay, so we're talking drivetrains, XTR drivetrain. I must admit, this is it's working absolutely flawlessly, and I must admit, it feels really nice. But question is, do you really need that expensive a drivetrain on an e-bike? I must admit, if I was buying this bike, I might even take it off, put it in a box somewhere, put a cheap one on, and then when I came to sell the bike, put the expensive drivetrain back on. Yeah, we can do these jumps. Oh, beautifully. Oh, that actually feels really nice. All right, what about the big one? Oh yeah, it's plush as. How you doing? Sorry. No worries, you're right. Now this will probably come as no surprise to you, but the thing climbs really well, as most e-bikes do. I guess it's more a downhill orientated bike, but I find even those, as I say, with the motor assist, good traction tyres, it's amazing what you can get up. Oh, don't get through there. Ooh, oh, no. Not going through there. Okay, this will be a good test of the old climb. Really slicky. I'm spinning the whole way up. Get the weight down. Well, we're still. Oh, okay. Yep. Couldn't do it, eh? It's just too slippery. Maybe a bit lower tyre pressure. Up until this point, it'd been wet, but I managed to keep the bike relatively clean. That last hill, the clay, it's terrible. It's like modelling clay. It just sticks to your bike. So I spent about the last 10-15 minutes just literally scraping it off. But anyway, it'll be a good test for the old drivetrain, I think, now to see how it copes with all that really sticky clay. But I managed to get most of it off. But yeah, terrible stuff to ride in. One of the tough things I find when making these videos is actually keeping them short enough. I usually like them to be about 12 or 13 minutes, and we've already gone well over that. A lot of people struggle to listen to my voice for that long. Now, the plan on this video was actually on day 2, I was going to meet up with a couple of friends, and we were all going to have a try on the KTM Prowler. And one of the guys was actually an e-bike virgin, so it was really interesting to see how he responded to riding this thing. However, there's just not enough time to add that onto the video, so I've decided to make it into its own video. So you better subscribe if you want to see that one. Now, as for this bike, I'd really like to hit this up on some even bigger jumps and ride it in some dry conditions. It's a real beast of a bike. Saying that, if you did decide that you wanted to do fire roads and do the rail trail on it, I think you'd still really enjoy it. One of the great things about an e-bike is that having a motor, you can still ride a big downhill bike and still enjoy it. I certainly really enjoyed riding this thing. Okay guys, so that's the end of day 1 on the KTM Prowler. I'm kind of hoping there's going to be a day 2. I've got to take it back tomorrow, but I'm hoping I might be able to get a quick ride on it on some dry conditions. But just in case I don't, I'll let you know what I think of it now. Love the look of it. I love riding it. The geometry feels really good. 65-degree head angle, nice. The reach, everything feels really good for me. Enjoyed the whole mullet thing as well. It handled nicely. The only thing I didn't like about it was, to say, the seat post didn't go down low enough for my liking, and I didn't like the actuator, but as I say, that could be changed. Everything else, the brakes, I love the feel of the brakes. As I say, I was concerned about the small rotor, but certainly on this ride didn't seem to be an issue at all. Would I buy the thing? It's a lot of money, 14 grand, but it's a lot of bike. I mean, it's pretty high spec. The XTR drivetrain, if I was building a bike, I don't know that I'd ever put a drivetrain on it that flash, but it certainly ran really nicely and really smooth despite the terrible conditions today. So yeah, really like the bike. It's a beautiful piece of kit. Hoping, as I say, to see you guys again tomorrow, but if I don't, love it if you subscribe, love it if you hit the old like button, and always like to hear your comments on what you thought of the video. Anyway, so I'll either see you tomorrow or we'll see you on the next one.